The infamous bar chords. They're so hard to play, so tiring for the hands. They're the great gatekeeper between beginner and intermediate players. But what if I told you there's a trick, a little shortcut that lets you skip the struggle, sound advanced, and get closer to mastering bar chords without all that pain? In this lesson, I'm going to show you open bar chords, which is basically a cheat code to sound advanced in literally minutes. You're going to learn a simple shape that is fun, effortless, and makes your guitar sound magical. Bar chords are a killer way to sound better and break through into a new level of playing. Every guitarist kind of has conquering bar chords on their bucket list, but a full practice session just hacking away at terrible sounding bar chords, it really sounds like work. And it also sounds painful too. The reason why bar chords are so hard is because you're having to coordinate two techniques at once. First, you have to do the bar, where you flatten your finger and lay it across multiple strings at the same time. And that's really hard just by itself. But then you also have to create a full chord shape with the leftover fingers. And pairing these curved fingers with the barred finger is definitely a knuckle buster. Well, open bar chords are the perfect solution. They're way easier to play than bar chords, but they still help you get better at real bar chords. And on the way there, you can have a ton of fun and sound really good if you just use a few of the tricks I'm going to show you in this video. So what is an open bar chord exactly? An open bar chord is honestly kind of a false nickname because it really doesn't use a bar. It's the shape of the four fingers that you use for a bar chord, like this, but no bar on strings 1 and 2. Which means we eliminate the difficult technique of the bar, and we get to focus only on making the overall shape, which is a lot easier when all four fingers are curved in the same way. Now, I always recommend that guitarists who struggle with bar chords spend some time playing open bar chords because you need time to absorb the shape before adding the challenge of doing the bar too. So as you'll see here, leaving these first two strings open leaves a nice magical open sound. But it's not always going to sound good. It really depends on where you play. If I go 1 fret down, I have a few tricks though to guarantee that you can sound good anywhere. And the first trick is to work in the specific keys of E or A major. I'm going to focus mostly on E in this video to keep the lesson succinct. But consider it a homework assignment to work out the same concepts from this video in the key of A later. That would mean that you learned it really well. So if you stick to these two keys, the open strings are guaranteed to sound good over every chord. And they give a nice sort of magic or shimmer to the chords that adds some complexity and makes you sound like less of a beginner as well. Here's an example of a classic 1, 4, and 5 chords in E. So we've got E, and we have A, and we have B. Listen to those nice sounds. Now, a lot of us might have worked on songs that use 1, 4, and 5 chords as we're learning our basic chords, but watch what these open bar chords do to a basic song. So let's take something like Amazing Grace. That's a song with 1, 4, and 5 chords that basically everybody knows and many of you have played. But watch what happens with open bar chords just to give it that extra sparkle. Dun, dun, da, 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 da. So already we're sounding good, magical, and more advanced. Now some of you might want to just stop there, but then again, that's only 3 chords. That'll get boring pretty fast, so what else can we do? Well, this is where our second trick comes in handy. Trick number 2 is learn the minor chord shape. To get some real nice contrast, we need to find a way to do a minor open bar chord too. Now there are multiple ways to do this, and unfortunately they're not as easy as the major chord. I'll give you a few options to try out and you can see what works best. So I'm going to jump up here to the 9th fret. If I do my major chord shape, you'll see it doesn't sound good. This needs to be a minor chord. So to make a chord minor, you have to take your 2 finger and make it 1 fret lower. But obviously that's way difficult to get these 2 fingers over here still. So an easier way to do this is keep the 1 finger, keep the 2 finger, but rather than try to get 3 and 4, you're going to take your pinky, the 4th finger, reach it all the way over to the 5th string and keep that note. Don't worry if your finger's flat because it's actually good and you're supposed to be blocking the 4th string. So instead of getting this sound, you're going to get almost the exact same sound here. And when you strum it as a chord, you don't notice the blocked note. A lot easier to grab, so play around with that, practice that. The main feature to remember here is that the 2 finger decides if it's major or minor. You have to slide it 1 fret in if you want minor, and then add the pinky. So now you can play around with 4 magical sounding chords. We've got 1 chord, our 4 chord, our 5 chord. If you go up here to the 9th fret, you have your 6 chord, which is minor. There are tons of common chord progressions that involve 1, 4, 5, and 6. but you can just play around and have some fun already. So let's play around with these 4 chords now, see what we can come up with. We'll start on the 6th chord just for fun. But wait, there is one more trick to take this all the way. Trick number 3 is to build chords off of a 1-string scale. Now this part's a little harder, but if you stick with me, I'll make it as easy as possible. Now you might have learned a scale before, but if you did it, it was probably a multiple string scale, like this. Well, to do our trick here, we're going to create the same scale, but on 1 string, like this. Now, that's going to be kind of hard to memorize, but if you use this concept of whole steps and half steps, you don't even have to memorize the exact notes, which makes it even easier. So just remember this. A whole step is 2 frets, a half step is 1 fret. Now, we're going to play the scale, but I'm going to modify the usual major scale by just 1 note. And I'm going to do that on purpose, just so we can stick to exclusively major and minor chord shapes and not have to worry about a diminished chord. It also just makes the scale easy to remember. What you have to remember is whole, whole, half, and then again, whole, whole, half. Remember that. Whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half. Let me show you. The beginning of our scale starts on E, and we'll end on E, which is the 12th fret. So those are our outer points of the scale. In between, whole, whole, half, like so. 2 frets is a whole step. Then another whole, it's 2 more frets, and then a half, that's 1 fret. Okay, now we're gonna shift our hand and we're gonna do whole, whole, half again. So here's where we are, here's 2 frets away. That's whole, whole, and here's our modified note, half, and then we have the end of the scale, the 12th fret. Now again, that 7th note is different than a real major scale, but I'm doing that on purpose. So now all that's left is to build chords off of each of these notes on the E string. Some of them are major and some of them are minor, but which ones are which? Well, there's sort of a chord palette that works in every key if you use numbers. So here's the order. The 1 chord is major, the 2 chord is minor, 3 chord is minor, half step up to the 4 chord, that's major. We know that the 4 chord and the 5 chord, which is also major. 6 chord is a whole step away. And here's our modified 7 chord. You could call this a lowered or flatted 7th chord. And then right up here at the 12th fret, if you can fit it in, back to the 1 chord. Now, unfortunately, that palette is something you just have to memorize or write down. I'd recommend memorizing it this way. You know 1, 4, and 5 are major. So if you just remember that that lowered 7th chord is also major, the rest is minor. So now all that's left is to just have fun and play around using all 3 of these tricks. So let's go through it. You can start just by playing each one in order. 1 chord. Let's go to the 2 chord now. Sounds really nice. Just going right in order. 4 chord, 5 chord, 6, 7, 1. I like that. That's a nice ending. Okay, now let's change the order a little bit. Now obviously I could just go on jamming forever here, and so could you. So now stop watching and start playing. Go have tons of fun. Spice up your old songs with new magical sounds, or get creative and write something yourself with this new chord palette. So one of the things that's fun about a lesson like this is it gives you an easy victory. It's easy chords to figure out and play around with and have some fun. But even still, we need some structure in our lives too to be able to practice things right. I created a card game for guitarists for that exact purpose, to mix the balance between fun and progress. And Practice Pilot is a really cool way to do that. You can just grab a couple of cards, gives you a fun practice activity, gives you some structure, but it makes sure that you're doing something the right way, thinking about the right things so you can make progress as well. I left a link in the comments, so if you want to learn more about it, check it out there. If you like this lesson, let me know in the comments. Tell me what songs you're using these chords for, tell me how the jamming's going, and ask me any questions you've got.